Robert Downey Jr. is one of the most popular and well-paid actors on the planet thanks to his iconic portrayal of Iron Man. But this was not an overnight success story, as we all know that he fell victim to drugs and alcohol and was at a point on the cusp of being completely exiled from Hollywood. However, what people might not realize is that love was possibly the reason for his addiction, with the actor associating it with drugs for so long. So, what was it that brought Robert back to life? Or should we say, who? Stay tuned as we uncover how love turned out to be his biggest downfall and yet the only thing that could save him. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Hollywood's history with child stars has proven that no one can be surprised when a child who grew up in the business eventually resorts to drugs and alcohol. But what makes Downey's case both fascinating and tragic is that he already had an intense history of substance abuse before he even tried his hand at acting. This was all, unfortunately, thanks to the first person Downey loved, his father.
You know, the dark periods you went through, and taking drugs and drinking and all of that. And I just wondered whether, you know, you think you're free of all of that, or whether that's still something.
I'm sorry, I really don't. What are we doing?
His father, Robert Downey Sr., is a Hollywood filmmaker, actor, and producer. It must have been nice to grow up right in the epicenter of the movie business, but regrettably, filmmaking wasn't the only thing that Downey grew up with. To his future dismay, Downey Jr. was introduced to drugs at a very early age. It was no surprise that Downey Jr. decided to live with his father after his parents divorced, hoping he would have a better chance of making it in Hollywood. However, this turned out to be the catalyst for his long and strenuous battle with drugs and alcohol. It would seem that Downey Jr. was doomed from the start, as his dad was already heavily struggling with substance abuse by the time his son was born. Believe it or not, Downey Jr. already got his first taste of marijuana when he was only 6 years old. Yeah, you heard right, 6 years old. His father admitted that he gave his son a joint one day as a joke. He said, "You ought to try a little of this instead of drinking." And so he did, over and over again. If only Downey Sr. knew how seriously his son would take his advice. According to the actor, marijuana was as much of a staple in their house as rice was. Clearly, Robert Downey Sr. wasn't all that prepared to be a father, as the only way he thought he could bond with his son was through the use of drugs and alcohol. In a 1988 interview, Downey Jr. said, "When my dad and I would do drugs together, it was like him trying to express his love for me in the only way he knew how." With that kind of mindset, you can't blame the actor for connecting drugs and alcohol to love. It was all he knew. He was taught to express love and create meaningful relationships through substance abuse, ironically leading to his tarnation. When Robert Downey Jr. would seek love, all he would find is self-destruction, and so falling victim to the same substances as his dad. In his 20s, Downey would go on to star in many successful films while under the influence of drugs and alcohol. Never wanting to take the easy option, the actor took on one of his hardest acting challenges to date, playing the less than glamorous Julian Wells in the film Less Than Zero in 1987. Robert played a kid who got handed everything by his father and fell victim to drugs and alcohol, destroying his life in more ways than one. Talk about life imitating art. Tragically, no one realized the severity of the role and how close to home it would hit the actor. His addiction deepened every day in preparation for the film. The director of the film told Robert and his co-star, Andrew McCarthy, to go out and get into some trouble in order to have a better understanding of their characters. In fact, he wanted Downey to get into so much trouble that McCarthy would have to save him by imitating what happens in the movie. True to form, Downey got incredibly drunk and was arrested for public indecency, and so he became an exaggeration of his character in real life. People started to become more aware of Downey's addiction, but Downey always managed to stay somewhat professional and never let his addiction get in the way of his job, even when he showed up high as a kite. It makes sense as to why the actor never thought to seek treatment through his own accord, as Hollywood was getting more worried about him getting the job done than his mental health. Robert quickly became known as one of Hollywood's most well-functioning addicts. However, spectators predicted that sooner or later it would have to unravel, and so it did. But not before Downey was cast in the role of his dreams, which turned out to be a love that would save him, but only for a short time. Few could believe that director Richard Attenborough was dead set on casting Downey as Charlie Chaplin. In fact, the studio was so against Downey that they backed out of the film, leaving Attenborough to raise the money for the film himself. That kind of dedication and commitment was clearly what Downey needed at the time because he decided to clean up his act for the film. He completely threw himself into the role, and the film credited him back as he received an Oscar nomination. Downey thrives on challenges, and although he played multiple roles post-Chaplin, none of them pushed him like that. And so, when Chaplin was over, so was his sobriety. It was around the filming of Home for the Holidays that Downey appeared to be using again. It went so far that director Jodie Foster staged a mini intervention for the actor, as she could see him unravel right before her eyes. Unfortunately, not even the birth of his first child could lead him on the right track. Interesting to think that it was soon after the birth of his son that he fell victim to heroin. Although he never gave any substances to his son, it's probably safe to say that Downey had no idea on how to have a functioning relationship with his kid. And so, he resorted to the only thing he knew. Things got really bad when he started smoking heroin and freebasing cocaine. In 1996, he was arrested 3 times in 1 month. Each charge was more bizarre than the previous one. Charges included possession and use of drugs, possession of an unloaded handgun, and the most infamous arrest was when he was found lying unconscious in the bed of his neighbor's daughter after breaking into their house. After a court case, Robert was forced to attend a locked-in clinic with a 3-year probation, along with the warning that if he were to be arrested again, he would be going to prison. And it was just a year later that Downey relapsed and found himself back in court with a judge who had run out of patience. Downey was incarcerated for 6 months. In an incredible fall from grace, Robert Downey Jr. went from an Oscar-nominated actor to inmate 50522 in under 5 years. He lost a lot of sympathy from the public, and there was little to no hope that he would be able to resurrect his reputation. To the surprise of many, Downey was cast in the TV drama Ally McBeal after being released from prison. Now, Robert has proven that he thrives on tests of his capacity, but it seemed as though the role didn't test anything other than his patience. And in the absence of true love and a professional challenge, Robert became restless and depressed, and so he went searching for comfort and fell off the bandwagon, again, finding himself back in jail for his 5th charge of drug possession and intoxication. He was fired from the sitcom, and his wife at the time filed for divorce. Robert had now truly hit rock bottom. With his career in shambles and his family gone, Robert knew he had to do something before he lost his life as well. He abandoned his addictions and a path of flirtation to destruction as he focused on his recovery for good. This was when life rewarded him by sending him a guardian angel in the form of producer Susan Levin. A love that would finally save him and guide him through the legacy he's known for today. Although Levin was interested in Downey, she had a career of her own and refused to allow him to derail her dreams. So, instead of giving him chance after chance, she gave him an ultimatum: lose the drugs or lose me. She didn't want to take care of him like everyone else. Instead, she treated him like an adult and called him out on his demons.
It's not that she doesn't give me validation, it's that she does not do what everyone else has always done, which is thought. I need to be taken care of, I need to be validated, I need to be compensated for, I need to this and that. She
doesn't treat you like a child.
Correct.
From that moment on, his relationship with her overtook his relationship with drugs and alcohol. To this day, Robert credits Susan and her love for him for his recovery, and as true partners, they kept on rising higher and higher together. And somehow, Downey was given another miracle, as it seemed as though the public was still rooting for him after all this time. People wanted him to succeed, not just for Downey's own good, but as a victory for the human spirit. Thank you, Susan Levin.
How is she so darn pretty and functional and mood stable?
There is no doubt that Robert Downey Jr. is one of Hollywood's biggest comeback stories, but what makes this one greater than the rest? It's love. Love that both ruined and saved the star. His love from his father set him on a damaging path, but luckily love was there to pick him back up and save him from his own self-destruction. And, thanks to Love's perseverance, we don't only know him as the great Iron Man, but also as one of Hollywood's highest-grossing actors of all time. Cheers to the comeback story of the ages.